today will be about showcasing both of those agenda items. What I'd like to do now, before I go any further, is introduce to you the Managing Director of Globo Hydropower, Elaine Johns. Thanks very much, Elaine.
Ladies and gentlemen, special guests, welcome. Thank you, Trevor. For those of you who don't know, Trevor's an OAM in his own right, and we're honoured to say that Trevor is the chairman of the Globo Hydropower Limited Standards Committee. And Trevor chairs that committee, and Trevor is part of the standards development for Globo Hydropower. I want to have him as part of our team. Ladies and gentlemen. Great. Whoops, now I've done it. You'll never have me as an IT person. I might have to get you to do it. Set this up. Yes, one back, please. Beautiful. Great. So, Globo Hydropower as a business tool. It's a very different fit to where it's been positioned in the past. It's a demonstration of environmental responsibility and the provision of green legislative compliance. Having worked with many of the customers during our prototype days and our R&D days and our product verification days, it became very apparent that there was an interest from a business perspective in green legislative compliance. Many of the customers that I've worked with have to report to the government's greener, cleaner fleet reporting system. And it's all about emissions reduction. There's a lot of interest, certainly, in Globo Hydropower as a business tool from a fuel savings perspective, but equally, it's the demonstration of environmental responsibility and, most importantly, green legislative compliance. A little bit of background. Australia signed the Kyoto Protocol. Many countries did. China was smart, they bought extra time. India was smart, they didn't sign. Globo Hydropower now may have to be the answer to Australia having signed the Kyoto Protocol. Countries who signed the Kyoto Protocol to reduce their negative greenhouse emissions will be fined 2020 in the billions if they don't meet the standards and the reductions that they have agreed to. I believe Australia will probably be one of those countries. If you don't meet the agreements that you've made with the United Nations, the government will be fined. There is talk that Australia may be up for $800 billion in fines because we've agreed to these high reductions with the United Nations, but the government is not taking active steps to meet those reductions. They're waiting for a miracle. I personally like to think Globo Hydropower is going to be that miracle. Thank you. Globo Hydropower is made as a business tool. It can offer companies who are applying for tenders and contracts the next marketing edge. Again, having spoke to many customers out in the marketplace, they're all looking for that next marketing edge when they're applying for tenders, when they're applying for contracts. I can speak to you from a generator perspective on this one in particular. I sat for many hours with Monica Barone from Sydney City, and that rang bells in my ears for many years, having spent a lot of time with John Watkins. Then having joined the business enterprise, when we were helping show his water engine, wanted to be the forever inventor. He has a website today, but behind his back, the commercial minds were all saying, ask Albert to will it to somebody. It's 30. Hydrogen, Elaine and Peter, he would say to us, that's the future. So why don't you create something that is the missing link? Future engines require infrastructure development, future engines require change, they require regulatory approval, they require decades. Hydrogen, as a fuel enhancer, can be implemented immediately. So Peter and myself decided that we would take on board what Frank Sartor said, and Globo Hydropower was born. We called it Globo Hydropower, short for what we termed Global Hydrogen Power. Because we were business coaches, we never wanted to be there forever and better. We want to be commercial. We want to have a commercial-ready product. We engaged technical people to assist us. We created the design. We knew what we wanted. We implemented the experts. Electrical engineers, mechanical engineers, mechanics, diesel mechanics, people who could turn Globo Hydropower into a commercial product worked with us. Unlike many inventions, if I differ us from that, we never started in a garage, we started in a workshop, always with that commercial intent. Globo Hydropower from 2005 to 2009 was development years. People say to me today, gee, it's taken so long. What has taken the time was to get regulatory comfort. Regulatory approval came later. Regulatory comfort in what we were doing. Everybody thought of the Hindenburg disaster. I think now we all very much are aware that the Hindenburg disaster was the paint that actually caught fire. The hydrogen was not involved in the Hindenburg. But something like that lingers on in people's minds. Trevor and I were talking this morning about the movie Jaws. And I was a little girl when Jaws was out, I was saying to Trevor. And to this day, I am terrified of the ocean. We were in Tonga, I was telling Trevor this morning. And they said, get a ferry across to Far Far Island. And I thought, a ferry, Manly ferry, okay. I didn't know it was a fisherman's boat with rust. And I looked around at everybody and all I said to them was, is there any sharks in this Pacific Ocean? And with that, Jaws rang a bell in everybody's head. Everybody was terrified. Equally, the Hindenburg disaster took many years for the truth to come out and for hydrogen to be accepted. I'm sure we're quite aware that hydrogen is probably one of the safest gases. It's an innate gas. To be explosive, to be dangerous, it needs to be contained, and it needs 4 parts oxygen to 1 part hydrogen before it can be explosive. When Globo Hydropower started, we thought, well, we need hydrogen. How are we going to get our hydrogen? So like many people on the internet, which is a plethora of these people, we created every electrolyser you could imagine. We created them the size of the doors, always trying to achieve the greatest yield of hydrogen. And I look at Ben in the front row here, because Ben was around in those days when we were building electrolysers. We were going to build the biggest and best electrolyser to create hydrogen. Then we were going to build the biggest and best battery that could create the inlet power to charge these electrolysers. After we built every size, every shape, technological electrolyser, we learned very quickly that was never going to happen. The input energy on those systems is greater than the yield of hydrogen. So if you do an internet search and you see the onboard electrolyser systems or hydrogen on demand systems, what they don't tell you, after they tell you it works, what they don't tell you is it takes 10 truck batteries fully drained to get 30 minutes driving time. It takes a lot of energy to separate water to create oxygen and hydrogen. Then come the quandary for Peter and I about where we're going to get the hydrogen. And I can stand here and I've told these companies I'm about to name that I'll name them and shame them one day, and they laugh with me now. When I first started, Air Liquide said to me, oh, how dangerous. Oh, no, we can't be involved. Air Liquide came back to me 5 years later and said, can I take back what I said? I said, too late. EOC in the early days supported me. And then they decided that we were going to be a competitor to LPG, so they took my size cylinder off the market. So I thought, oh, yeah, I'll buy from New Zealand. And New Zealand didn't have a market for that size cylinder either. VOC came back to me 5 years later and said, we think we want to be involved. We misunderstood. The people that joined us and supported us from 2009, to their credit, was Coregas. Coregas is a Wesfarmers company. They've travelled the journey. I might say that we've had our ups and downs and our laughs and our cries with Wesfarmers. They'll come back to us one day in a very different light as well. Wesfarmers have been supportive. Wesfarmers have been of criticism. Wesfarmers are still with us and they will travel the journey as we progress. Coregas is our gas supplier. It took 19 months of engineering due diligence and approvals before they would allow us to put hydrogen cylinders into the marketplace as a swap-and-go system, as Globo Hydropower uses. They're thinking, being Wesfarmers, that if there was an accident in the marketplace, it would domino all the way back and affect the Wesfarmers share price. 19 months of due diligence on a weekly basis. Once their scientists, their engineers approved Globo Hydropower, they allowed us to then become commercial. Wesfarmers, as I said, we've had our highs and lows, and I can't deny that, because they are Wesfarmers. They are the giant, we're the growing company. Wesfarmers, once they decided that they were going to support Globo Hydropower from a gas supply context in Australia, they then introduced us to the gas companies around the world. And it was through them that we've developed networks with the gas companies, Air Products in Asia, Nessa in the European countries, Praxair for the South Americas. We have a very, very strong relationship with the gas companies. And the gas companies do want Globo Hydropower to go forward. Certainly, they see the commercial benefit. They see Globo Hydropower as a mechanical tool, but they see it as a business tool. Hydrogen's a waste product for these gas companies. When they're refining their natural gas or their oil, hydrogen's vented into the atmosphere. In Germany, they burn it every night because they have too much hydrogen. So hydrogen as a waste product can be captured and sold to us at a negotiated price. If you were to buy hydrogen gas outside of Globo Hydropower, you're looking at roughly $1.80 a litre. Globo Hydropower retails it for 5 cents a litre. We've negotiated those supply agreements. The gas companies support us. In many countries, the gas companies want to be the salespeople for Globo Hydropower. They're selling their waste product. Again, they're not looking at the mechanical side of it, they're looking at the business tool. So if you hear the stories about the hydrogen economy, and hydrogen will be a long way off, I'm proud to stand here and say we can retail it for 5 cents a litre. In this case, I'm referencing Australian prices. Globo Hydropower, once it had its approvals, we thought, great, we'll go to market in 2009. So Peter and myself, we decided to set up a public company. The public company today holds 357 shareholders. We're not listed at this stage. We were always looking for an ASX listing. Business strategies have changed over the years, and as we progress into other countries, we'll probably go with a NASDAQ listing more so than an ASX listing. The background to Globo Hydropower has been set up to be public. Globo Hydropower Limited now has a series of product distributors around the world. We're always looking for other product distributors.
We're out at the generator hire workshop at Smithfield. It's going to be for a demonstration of Globo Hydropower on a diesel generator.
That's what they're going against. Oh, sorry. So
Things I'd like to show you. First up is the emissions before we turn the hydrogen on. When we were here last time, we had an IT person, no offence to the IT people, I normally pick on the accountants, don't I, Michael? The IT person said, there's no exhaust coming through that, so he got up there to put his hand over it, 2,000 degrees heat. Because he didn't believe that there was hydrogen running through the engine because of the emissions were so clean. So we're on guard of that next time in Townsend. So watch where the smoke starts, that's running without hydrogen, and as the hydrogen's turned on, you'll see the emissions change. Now this is certainly a very big point for various countries that are looking to maintain emissions reduction. We're also going to show you the hydrogen running, and Frank will be running this through the containers so we can actually show you the fuel savings. And we're looking here, a couple of things to look at as we start. The emissions through the exhaust, through the top of it. You'll see that we've got a G-size cylinder. Now a G-size cylinder is a typical size cylinder that generators use. They often use them in banks of 16. They call them a hydrogen cylinder bank. This particular one's got 8,800 gaseous litres inside of the cylinder. So with the generators, when they're using banks of cylinders, they just swap from one to the other through a manifold system. During the presentation, I'll actually stop and ask you to come over and look to show you there's no heat. That's a question I get quite regularly, that is there a heat impact using the hydrogen, because hydrogen burns quicker and hotter? No, so we'll look at those various things. So as we go through the presentation about how Globo hydropower works in generators, the machine will be running, and equally we'll draw your attention to various points. Right. Frank, if you'd like to start it without hydrogen first.
Yeah, but I want to show them a measured amount of fuel that we get it out of the Bowser, so we mark that off. So I'll start it up anyway, and then I'll get the fuel.
You'll notice with the generators, Cummins are already green.
distillate hydrogen, no smoke. This is the bus that has the hydrogen fitted to it.
Went to Melbourne and back to Melbourne before we had the cylinder. And the cylinder did a little bit more around so Melbourne, Sydney, and then a little bit around Sydney.
At the automated diesel mechanics workshop, where we're going to run a dyno test on Peter's utility. Hydrogen cellars in the back of the utility.
What we're showing up here on the screen, this is actually reading the engine as it's running. Well, why it works in the red picture. So what we've done, hydrogen is 320 megajoules, diesel 52 megajoules, and we've replaced one fuel with an alternative fuel. We've replaced an expensive fuel with a cheap fuel. This engine's running at the moment on 30% fuel savings. We can take it up to higher, up to 40%. Generator company, insurance companies on autos come for around 40. You can go higher on older vehicles, but we've got to work within the insurance companies parameters, no more than 50 at any stage. So what happens is you purchase Globo Hydro Power and ECU created to suit your engine capacity. The ECU is installed, it shares the signals of the original 20% less fuel, replace it with hydrogen, and still has the same power outage. Most of the trucking companies, especially some of the bus companies, they want to know no power loss.
The power readings, they were across the board, they're 5, 6, 7 kilowatts greater. So what I'll do is I'll actually just hook it up on one vehicle. Wide, and just need to warm up a little bit more, so it won't be another minute. Readings all come up quite similar.
If at the school you get on average 4.5% talk improvement. So a hydrogen hybrid does work. Authorities to get hydrogen through the solenoids. The solenoid's a shut-off valve. When ignition is turned off, the solenoid turns off. This is the CU days. We were looking at what we were going to do to overcome turbo pressure. This is a twin-turbo, 8-cylinder engine.
Sorry, your bag blew away at one stage there.
Yeah, I didn't see it.
Vic's going to open the engine for us.
Yeah.
As you say, that's going to be a big seller for a lot of companies in the future.